stormy night.
Give it 20 seconds. And welcome to Three Geeks in a Microphone podcast. I'm Dean.
I'm Art.
I'm Russ.
And today we have another special guest. Matt, how you doing, sir?
I'm good. How are you?
Good. Today is our fourth and final episode in our series on vintage video games. Today we are discussing PC gaming throughout the ages.
The ancient years of gaming.
I was a big PC gamer back in the 90s. Let's kind of get a foothold. Who played? We all used Ataris and Nintendos. We know that, but who here were PC gamers?
Oh, I was.
Yeah,
It wasn't so much. My only connection with PC games at that point when I was young was the rich neighbors that had them and stuff like that, and friends of mine.
I might have played a couple of those stupid educational ones in a computer class in grade school or in high school.
Okay.
I have absolutely, very, very little connection to them at all.
All right.
But I did play some, so I have something to offer.
I played Oregon Trail. I died of dysentery several times.
Well, that's a classic. I mean, come on now. I mean, I remember Russ, you and I are a lot alike here. Probably my first exposure was when I was in elementary school, playing Oregon Trail on an Apple IIe with a green screen. I mean, I think
awesome.
I think we all remember that. But it was, I had a Commodore 64. I didn't do too much with it, but my first real Intel machine I got in the mid 90s, the Pentium 75 with 40 megabyte hard drive and 4 megs of RAM with a 2x CD-ROM. I mean, this was cutting edge at the time. But Art, what is that behind you?
That's actually one of the screenshots from Star Trek the 25th anniversary. This is probably this and the Dick Tracy crime-solving adventure game I probably played more than any other game ever since. In fact, my childhood best friend, Robert Eichmann, and I used to play these two games for hours on end. And then we'd call each other because you didn't really have, we had internet, but it wasn't like it is today. You couldn't Google the cheats, and these were kind of puzzle-based games. So we would play them in advance, then call each other and be like, no, I figured out this, what you got to do at this point. So you could advance through the games.
Mm-hmm.
We didn't know that they actually had cheat books, or walkthrough books, but yeah, that's from Star Trek the 25th anniversary. It was the first game that actually had the voices from all of the screen actors and actresses in the game. So all of the cutscenes and everything had actual voice in it.
Voiceovers,
Oh.
okay.
Nice.
And
Now, is that an 80s game or an early 90s game? When did that come out?
this one actually came out in I can tell you here in a second. It was either 90 or 91. Yeah, this one came out in 1991.
So right when we were in high school.
Yeah. Well, I think I was in like the 7th or 8th grade.
Well, I was in 9th grade at the time, so
Yeah.
Yeah, I think I was in 8th grade then.
I mean, I didn't get big into PC gaming until years. I had a job. I was just out of high school, and I took a job at, they don't exist anymore. It's called Computer City. They were all over the place in the 90s. CompUSA took them over. But that was kind of my exposure. That, and a friend of mine I had met there who was big into PC gaming, he got me into like the Wing Commander series and Privateer, and then I was around when the original Diablo came out, Diablo 1. My buddy and I can remember to this day playing Diablo together on using TCP/IP on a dial-up modem. We would connect to each other's machines and play. And one night we started off a brand new game, and the next morning, I remember the sun coming up. We had just beat it, so we had sat down and completed Diablo 1 together, going through the whole thing in one night.
Wow. That's a hell of a night.
Yeah. StarCraft, I'm a big Blizzard fan. I love the original StarCraft. In fact, yeah, anyone here ever do a LAN party?
Oh yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yep, in the early 2000s,
Mm-hmm.
especially with StarCraft.
Yep. So my buddy had called me up one night, and he lived down in Hamtramck, which is a small city within Detroit. And he's like, "Hey, pack up your box, come on down, and the three of us, we're going to hook up and we're going to play some StarCraft." I'm like, "Okay." So we go down there, or I go down there, and we hook up and we're playing. But the one thing I didn't think to look at was the weather. We got nailed with a blizzard, quite literally. And we were snowed in down there for 3 days. They couldn't plow, they couldn't do anything. Wow. So for 3 days, now the city where we were in was, most of the local businesses, they either live above it or live close by. So there was a barbecue joint a couple blocks over that had opened up. Even during the blizzard, they still opened up. So we trudged through the snow, got $150 worth of barbecue, came back to the house, and was drinking mud thick coffee, playing StarCraft for 3 days consistently. None of us stopped to sleep. For a full 3 days, we did nothing but play StarCraft with each other.
Wow.
And yeah, it was rough. Especially the last day was just rough, but it's something I'll never forget. That was a hell of a lot of fun.
That's a lot of StarCraft.
Yeah. And it was just the three of us too. So each one would take a race and go at it. It got to the point where the map was totally cleared, and we had decimated each other to the point where I think the only thing we had left was a couple builders, and that was it. There was no resources left. We had drained the map of everything. And at one point we called it a draw because you couldn't kill each other. I don't know how many times I've sacrificed units because I hit my unit cap, and I'm just sacrificing units so I can build other shit. But Diablo 2, Diablo 3, the Daggerfall games, you guys have played Elder Scrolls, right?
Yeah.
I never have, no.
No?
I played Skyrim,
Okay.
but not on PC. I played it on Xbox.
Okay. Well, that goes back to an early series on PC called Daggerfall. And it was interesting because it was, at the time, it was one of the largest games ever made as far as a map goes. And it was real time. If you wanted to walk from one end of thing to the other, it would take you 2 weeks of just holding that button in to walk across.
Oh,
it was utterly insane. But
a lot of time.
yeah. So now do you have if you had to pick, what would it be a favorite type game?
Oh,
Old or new?
Definitely old. I have so many though that are like way even older than this one. A lot of people probably don't remember. A lot of schools use the Scholastic microzine series for the old apples.
Mm-hmm.
a lot of them were learning games, but we actually had at home the complete collection of them. And those were some of those were even out before Oregon Trail. And then some of the like the early before Duke Nukem, there was Wolfenstein 3D, Doom.
Wolfenstein's the grandfather.
Yeah. I guess when I think like vintage video games or vintage PC games, I kind of think really no later than like 91 or 92. Because that was really when I played the most. I mean, a few years ago, my daughters were really into Star Trek Online, and we played that together with one of my cousins. But it wasn't anywhere near as much fun or even engaging as the original Star Trek 25th anniversary game. Despite the fact that there was a huge difference in graphics. The Star Trek 25th anniversary game was intended for old 386s and 486s. So the same with the Dick Tracy crime solving adventure, which, by the way, I sent a link to Michael for this morning.
Okay.
Because I know he likes that game too. And by the way, the playable versions of these I got thanks to Chris Newman of All. I have to look that up again. The name of his company is I think it was like allgames.org.
I know there's a I think in the Wayback Machine, some of the really early PC games like Zork and whatnot, you can now play those for free in the browser.
Yeah, it was allvideo.org. Chris Newman actually made some of these old DOS games playable on a modern PC.
Yeah, you mentioned, I remember years back I had gotten a newer machine, and just for shits and giggles, I decided to install Warcraft 2 just to try it.
Mm-hmm.
And it was even with all the settings turned down as low as they could go, it was so fast it was unplayable.
Yeah.
You just you couldn't play it. So a couple of years ago, someone had come out with DOSBox, which is a DOS emulator that allows you to play these old DOS games, and it emulates the older hardware. So you can still play it on your modern machine, but it plays correctly. It's not too fast or too slow. In fact, some of them are so well done that you actually have to deal with IRQs to get the sound to work, which was all kinds of fun. But so, Matt, you said you didn't have a huge exposure to it. What is your exposure to PC gaming?
When I was a kid, I remember one of my neighbors that lived a couple houses away. I remember they were like the only kids in the neighborhood that had a computer, and I want to say they had a Commodore 64. And I remember playing the G.I. Joe game that came out. I don't know if it has another name or not, but it's the one where you could play as different characters, both Cobra and G.I. Joe, and like that one to me, that was the coolest thing ever. Because I remember you could play as Snake Eyes or as, Storm Shadow or Major Blood or whoever. And you were kind of running around and shooting stuff, and you were in rooms. And so I remember that one was a lot of fun. Gosh, I mean, I know there were some other computer games that I played. I just don't remember many of them.
Sure.
I remember always wanting a computer, but back then they were just so cost prohibitive that it was just never going to happen. But I remember seeing advertisements for computer games and then just being like, oh man, that looks so cool. And if only I had a Amiga, then I could get that game or whatever. And especially, I know Commodore 64 had a ton of exclusive games from a lot of the stuff that I was into as a kid. The emulator that I have now has Amiga, has Commodore 64, has a bunch of different computer games on it. most of them, the only way you can play them is with a keyboard,
Right.
keyboard or a keyboard controller. And I know there's a Centurions game, Kenner Centurions.
Really?
Yeah, and I managed to play it a little bit, and it's not fantastic, but it's not terrible. It's very loosely based on them, but like the beginning, and they're doing the whole like standing with the arms out, and there's specific music for it. It was pretty cool. And then there's a couple of other ones. I can't think of any right now off the top of my head, but they had a really good catalog of games from what I remember. But my first real exposure to a computer game was StarCraft, and it was a guy I worked with in the early 2000s, and he was like, "Oh, dude, you never played StarCraft?" And I was like, "Nope." And I went over to his house, and he had 2 computers, and we would sit there back to back and play against each other.
Mm-hmm.
And that was like our Saturday morning thing for months. And then I got that game on my laptop, and I still have the laptop from the last, it was 2010, I think I bought it. And I keep it around because it's so outdated now just because it has StarCraft on it. And I charge that thing every now and then, and I'll just fire it up and play. But yeah, that's the majority of my PC gaming experience.
Now, Russ, you said you don't have a huge repertoire of. What is your experience with it?
Well, grade school, we'd play like Oregon Trail and Where in the World is Carmen Sandiego?
Oh yeah, that one too. Yeah.
Hey, that thing was huge. I mean, come on, it had its own. Didn't it have its own cartoon?
Yeah, and a TV show.
Yeah.
I mean, you're doing something right.
Then but yeah, that was only if you were like the kid that did the good deed for the day or whatever. Then you go and you get like an hour computer time or something, and it's not even enough. It took so long for the damn thing to boot up that you maybe had like 10 minutes to play. So then it's like, what's the point? He's like, Carmen Sandiego might be, some clues, and it's like Australia, and it's like, no, you're incorrect or whatever. And then you're like, oh, game playtime's over. Yeah, I didn't know anybody that had personal computers well enough to really go over and play with anything with them. I guess my cousin had a Commodore, and there's some helicopter like Chopper Command or something like that he had on it. It was very, very
Choplifter.
Yeah, Choplifter. That one I remember playing that. And then when we didn't get a home computer until like 1999. And so then from there I had like a couple games, I think Rogue Squadron and then Dukes of Hazzard or something. Neither one of them were, I had the same exact thing on the PlayStations and Nintendo, and it's like it was easier to play on the Nintendo and the PlayStation than it was on the computer. So just had these pointless games. Oh, and stuff like Big Game Hunter, those really cheesy hunting games that are so simplistic. You sit there and you just scroll around with your little arrow keys with your mouse in the other hand, and you see a poorly done graphic goose, deer, elk, whatever, run by, and you shoot at it. Can't miss. It's like it was programmed to make sure that you just got the darn thing. And yeah, that's the extent of my PC gaming. So you can see why I'm rather quiet on this one.
It's funny.
You guys are talking about games. I'm like, I heard of them, but
it's funny you say that, because in the mid to late 90s, like I said, I worked for Computer City. I left, and then I ended up working back for CompUSA. And I was in software sales, and my boss at the time was just a prick, because we would have vendors come in and they would, train us on different aspects of their software, answer questions, things like that. And a lot of times they would give you a copy of software. Not for it was a full retail version, but it wasn't supposed to be sold. And my boss got into the habit of the first thing he would ask these guys is, "What do you have free for me?" And I'm like, that's not what these guys are supposed to be doing. They're training us on the product. Well, we had a vendor come in, and he was the vendor for LucasArts and a couple other companies. And we were talking one day, and he says to me, he's like, "You've never once asked me for anything." I'm like, "Yeah, because that's not your job." He's like, "Come here." So he takes me out to his car. He opens his trunk, and it's full of LucasArts games. X-Wing versus TIE Fighter, Dark Forces. He's like, "Take what you want." So I loaded up, and then 2 weeks later, he asked me, he's like, "Hey, how would you like to do a side gig with me working for LucasArts?"
Huh.
So I did. I would bring, at the time I had like a Gateway 266. I would bring in my personal computer and run demos of whatever the latest LucasArts game was, and I'd for people to check out, so to increase their sales. I would do aisle sales in store. And once I got there, they used to ship me boxes of software. Unfortunately, I don't have any more of it. I wish I would have kept it, but I had like cases of X-Wing versus TIE Fighter, Dark Forces 2, cases of it. And oh well. Anyways, but so I'd played everything from like the Descent series to Privateer. Yeah, I guess you could say I am a big PC gamer, but is there any one that you played that stuck out in your mind, even if you didn't play it, you saw it and you're like, if I had the money, this is what I want. This is the reason why I want a PC.
There's one PC game I remember seeing an advertisement for called Heavy Metal, and it was like tank battles and stuff like that in the desert, and I remember just seeing that, and it was probably 1988 or something like that, and just thinking like, oh my god, like that looks awesome. And and it was always can we get a computer, because I'll use it for school. And of course, I just wanted to play Heavy Metal. But and to this day, I've never played that game, don't know anything about it. But I remember seeing that advertisement and being like, yeah. But yeah, I can't think of any other ones offhand.
Art?
We ended up with a lot of computers growing up, which is kind of messed up, because early on you could not talk my dad into buying a computer. Like the old Ataris, the early Apples, you couldn't talk him into it. And what ended up happening was I had an uncle that every time Apple or IBM put out a computer, he bought two of them, one for himself, one for his wife, but he had no kids. And when his wife died, all of the extra computers he gave us. So in our family room, we had a living room and a family room. Our living room, or our family room, basically became a computer room. We had IBMs in there and like 7 Apples. We had an Apple II Plus, 2E, 2GS. And after that, my dad was hooked. And we ended up with a 386, and then the 386 died, and he immediately bought a 486. And then he was hanging out with some of the neighbors and buying upgrade parts. And so I never really looked at any game specifically saying, well, I want a computer for that game, because we kind of already had them. And we ended up with more computers in our house than our entire school system had at the time. Because we ended up filling our living room with machines, or our family room, And then like the back half of our garage, we ended up with like 3 apples out there.
That's wow.
Why am I picturing
Yeah.
Art's house having like a bookcase and you push a button, it slides. It's like all these computer monitors and he's
But
got
yeah,
like,
we ended up actually with a bookcase full of software as well and games. Like all that was how we ended up with the complete collection of the Scholastic Microzine. And we had like obscure stuff that you couldn't, like, you would have had to have gone to an electronics show or a computer show to get. We had games like Hammurabi for the old Apple II Pluses. We had some really obscure stuff. But I was really into Star Trek games. You know, so it kind of became a progression from like the old Apple Star Trek games through like the Tandy 128K computer. I don't know if you guys even remember those.
Mhm.
Radio Shack sold those.
Yep. Trash 80s.
Huh?
Trash 80s.
Yeah. The TRS 80s. And then for the PC, the Star Trek 25th anniversary, and after that, it was like the Star Trek Interactive Technical Manual and Borg and Klingon, and those games. By that point, I ended up with a IBM PS2, the 25 plus, and I played the ever living hell out of all of those games. I was supposed to be doing homework, and I was sneaking game time on the computers. So there wasn't really any one game. It was kind of a progressional kind of thing.
Oh yeah, and for me, it was like as the hardware progressed, the games got better. And since I worked for computer retail, we got everything at cost. So most of my paychecks were going towards upgrading my machines. So because like I said, we get it at cost. I mean, at one point, I had hand built a machine. I had a 5.1 THX approved surround sound in my bedroom. And I remember when they did the reboot of Doom, and they tell you in the manual, whoa, did we lose Matt?
Yep.
They tell you in the manual to turn it up. So I did. And it was one of the creepiest games I've ever played, because you're going through these, it's like, if you've never played Doom before, it's you're on a space station that is essentially has a portal to hell through it, and now you have demons walking around inside this space station, and you're like a space marine trying to survive. And I'm sitting there, and you can hear something breathing, and the way the surround sound worked, it was coming from behind me, and it was so unnerving. I turn around and I fire the pump action shotgun against it, and it was so loud. My windows were vibrating every time I would click to fire the gun. My mom gets up. What in the? This is like 3 a.m. and I'm blasting. My neighbor across the street complained it was too loud. At 2, 3 in the morning, you're hearing shotgun blasts coming from my bedroom. But I don't know. I mean, like I said, I am a huge. I guess I still am. I just pre-ordered the Diablo 2 remaster. It comes out the 23rd of this month. So I guess I still am. Well, I sent you. I sent both of you guys Diablo 3. Did I not?
You sent it to me, and then in return, I sent it to Russ.
And you never got it to run, right, Russ?
right. Yeah. My internet connection, everything is just so slow where I live.
Okay.
Yeah. In fact, I was happy the other day. I was able to, when I downloaded Trinity, I was able to do that in about 4 hours.
Not too bad.
Yeah, see,
So
I kind of looked at like PC gaming for a while. It was like it was getting better, like it was progressing, and then it like in the mid '90s, it felt like it kind of like stagnated in a sense because you had like these like choose your own adventure games where the graphics were basically movies,
mhm.
but the storyline sucked.
Games
And
like
gameplay.
you're talking like games like Phantasmagoria or The Seventh Guest, stuff like that.
Well, not just those, but like at about the same time the Sega CD-ROM system came out,
Mhm.
and you had games like Sewer Sharks, or they're the I can't think of the name of the one with the it was like a hotel game where you had these like trap doors, and Corey Haim was actually in it.
Oh, good lord.
Yeah, but like and it even happened with like the Star Trek games like Borg and Klingon, where they were like choose your own adventures, but it was all basically a movie, kind of like Dragon's Lair, only with it was all live action. But then like it had advanced, but the computer technology hadn't really caught up for sound and video quality. So you had like choppy video
Mm-hmm.
and like shitty sound quality for something that was filmed like a movie. The Star Trek Interactive Technical Manual was probably like the best thing because that was like at your own pace kind of thing, where you could actually like walk through the Enterprise or the next generation Enterprise, the Enterprise D. But beyond that, I mean, it was kind of awful for quite a while, and I actually stopped playing PC games till like my second year in the Navy, and then it was oh, you had even mentioned it.
What
the hell was that game? StarCraft
mm-hmm.
and Diablo, and
Yep.
then Diablo 2.
And it's in some way, I mean, a lot of these companies, the early games companies, they don't exist anymore. I mean, most of like Blizzard's still around, but from what I understand, might not be for very long.
Yeah.
They're still around. Sierra, who did like the Ultima series, which was a hugely popular series of kind of like dungeon crawler games, they're gone. They were the first one to do an MMO. Ultima Online was their very first MMO in the 90s, and I remember when everyone and their brother wanted that thing when that came out.
Yeah.
I was working there, and we sold pallets of them, but I wouldn't say it was poorly done, but you're trying to play this on dial-up, and it just wasn't, the connection speeds weren't fast enough. And again, we played for Star Wars Galaxies is another big one. It was a large MMO that everyone wanted to play, and after a while, it just sucked because everyone wanted to be Jedi, and in order to become a Jedi, you had to grind and grind and grind, and it just got boring. I mean, I'm not going to waste 130 hours of my life trying to find the parts from a lightsaber, and then after a while they updated it and you could just pick a Jedi. I'm like, what's the point? I mean, I just wasted 100 plus hours. So I got out of it for a while, but I got a new machine and kind of came back to it. I'm playing some of the older stuff, but I don't know. I miss games like Privateer and Privateer 2 from the Wing Commander series. They were futuristic flight sims where you could customize your own ships and stuff like that. I love games like that.
See, I was into like 688i Hunter Killer. It was a submarine warfare game.
Mm-hmm.
Surprisingly, the sonar suite in it was very realistic for the time. And then at one point I got a copy of Star Trek Birth of the Federation, which was very much like a StarCraft kind of game, but you're playing against like Romulans, Klingon, and the Borg. And I think when I got it, I bet I spent like almost 2.5 days straight playing it till I beat it.
I remember days like that. I mean,
Yeah.
like I got heavy into the real-time strategy games for a while. Like there was one, oh my God, what was it called? I can picture it in my head and I can't think of the name of it. It'll come back to me. But you started off as a robot builder, and you were building an army to destroy, your opponent. But the interesting thing about this is, I think once a month, the company would release new units that you could download for free. This was before, there was like, it wasn't pay to play; it was free. You would have to download the file, insert the file into the install, and then your install pack, and then you would have new units to play with. But I thought it was innovative because it was free. Total Annihilation. That's what it was called. And it was unique. Now they're all pay to play or play to win. If you want the best shit, you have to pay for it, which I think is wrong. I don't like the pay to win model. If it's an even playing field, everyone has access to the same shit. Who's better? But anything else you want to go over on this one, guys, or anything else you want to touch on, or?
No, other than like Star Trek Online, I think I played when it first came out. I was in the beta testing group with it, and it was a hell of a lot of fun.
Nice.
And it got better like the first couple of years, but now I bought lifetime memberships, not just for myself, but each of my kids and my dad. And I don't think I do more than actually check my account maybe once, twice a year. Like get all the freebies you get for having a lifetime membership, and then I anymore I really don't play any games like I used to. But ever since Chris Newman sent me like Dick Tracy and the Star Trek 25th, I was up late last night playing it.
Nice.
And horsing around with the Dick Tracy game. But and that was something too early on with Star Trek Online. I kept sending them, critiques like, hey, go check out Star Trek the 25th anniversary game and see if you can include that in here, that whole storyline, because that was like 5 or 6 chapters. I think with the CD-ROM version you got an extra one, but to try to get them to include those stories, but they never did. I think had they have included those stories and those levels into or remade or remastered those, I'd love to see a remastered of both those games, the Star Trek 25th and the Dick Tracy game. If they included that, I'd probably start playing again.
You think there's a chance they ever would?
No, probably not. No, I mean that game's been around like 7 or 8 years. I got my main characters all like the maximum levels. In fact, I think I even started a couple farming accounts that I made lifetime accounts. And I actually really haven't played much since, like I said, other than to check my account every now and then, and that's about it.
I mean, listen, I love the real-time strategy stuff. I was a big fan of like Warcraft 2. Warcraft 3 sucked because they introduced the concept of hero characters. And if you had the best hero, you were winning. There was no strategy involved at all. And then that kind of morphed into World of Warcraft, which I absolutely hated. I tried it once and I never went back to it. It was boring. So I'm more of the single player or connect with your buddies like Diablo, Lost, Rush. Okay.
I think we just bored both those guys to absolute shit, and they're like, "Fuck this, I'm gone."
All right. Well, on that note,
Yeah.
let's wrap this one up. Well, thank you everyone, and we'll catch you on the next one. And
Yep.
let's go from there.
Yeah, hit like, share, and subscribe, and we greatly appreciate it. And we'll put links to allvideo.org and Murray Mouse, who was kind enough to make my uniform top. All right.
Sounds good. Give it 10 seconds.